I will be discussing my topic for the human socio-political development, and we will go through the introduction of this topic. Human social-political development are two interrelated concepts that have been studied extensively by scholars. From the name itself, we have human, social, and political development. All are interrelated for the fact that in order for a society to function, it should encompasses both the people and the organization that work for the social welfare of those people, and the political development which also runs and governs its people in that certain area. Now, we will one by one take disassemble the three words into their respective definition. So we will start first with human development. Human development, which emphasizes the importance of expanding people's choices and opportunities to lead meaningful lives. This concept prioritizes the satisfaction of fundamental necessities for living, such as leading a long and healthy life, being educated, and enjoying a decent standard of living. Additional choices include political freedom, guaranteed human rights, and self-concept. Now, human development, this primarily goes to the development of being, let's say, an individual. This development grants him the opportunities and choices to lead meaningful lives. Either they can go through religion and other ideologies that they can find meaning in their lives. Now we go to social development. Social development refers to the process of improving the well-being of individuals and communities through various means of education, healthcare, and economic growth. Now this is where the organizations and institutions comes in. We have for the health, the World Health Organizations, and in our country we have the Department of Health for the healthcare of the people. So we go through to political development. Political development, on the other hand, refers to the process of improving the institutions, attitudes, and values that form the political power of a society. So, from the term politics, we can assume that it is the governing institute that governs the people of his land. Now, for political development, this is refers to the improving of institutes, attitudes, and those laws that help the people and to continue to grow and develop as a society. Now, moving on to the importance of human social political development, it is a crucial aspect of a society's growth and progress. It encompasses the development of social and economic political institutions that are essential for the well-being of individuals and the community. It is essential for the growth and progress of a society. It is a complex process that depends on economic and non-economic factors, including development of institutions, attitudes, values from the political power system of society. What we mean by economic and non-economic factors, let us go through with the non-economic factors. We have here values and forms. This is something that originates from the people themselves, and the economic factor is by the business and how well a country runs its economy, whether it gains progress. And later on, we will my other groupmates will tackle with economic development. Let's take for example Philippines versus Japan. Both countries suffered from the World War II. But in today's time, Japan is considered to be a first world country and the Philippines as a third world country. See, certain values and economic growth differ from one another for various reasons. Japan has this called workaholic stereotype that they garnered because of their work ethics. They work like it's the end of the world if they stop. While Filipinos, on the other hand, can be seen as, for their values and beliefs, pretty not really lazy, but not on par with the Japanese value of virtue or other other values that they hold that made them who they are as a country today. So let us go on with theories. Achieving economic development or increasing the level of welfare depends on achieving and sustaining the main objective in political, economic, and social areas. We have approaches to human development. It is a process of enlarging people's choices. The most critical ones are to lead a long and healthy life, to be educated, and to enjoy a decent standard of living. Additional choices include political freedom, guaranteeing human rights, and self-respect, according to Human HDRO 1990. The human development approach insists that the fundamental aim of development policy should be to expand the opportunities that people have to live meaningful lives. Economic growth means toward this end, not an end of self. So we understand that human development comes from the person or the individual itself to lead their lives and finding meaning amongst them. Now let we go to social learning theory. It attempts to explain socialization and its effect on development of the self. It looks in the individual learning process on the formation of self and the influence of society in socializing individuals. Much like human development, this theory is another form of development of the self. It looks at the individual learning process, the formation of self, the society's influence, and times where an individual will socialize to society and forming relationships, connections, and bonds. The social learning theory was introduced by psychologist Albert Bandura. Thirdly, we have the basic needs approach. It is a major approach to the measurement of absolute poverty in developing countries. It attempts to define the absolute minimum resource necessary for long-term physical well-being, usually in terms of consumption goods. The poverty line is then defined as the amount of income required to satisfy those needs. The International Labour Organization identified 6 necessities under this approach, which are housing, water supply, sanitation, health, food, and education. Certain organizations around the world often go on missions to help those developing countries like in Africa, and those countries in the third world country where even the basic needs aren't exactly met. So what they do is they provide the needs of the people, the most basic one, like it can be housing, water supply, sanitation, everything that is included in the basic needs approach. We go to the capability approach. It is a normative framework for evaluating individual well-being and social arrangement. It focuses on the actual possibilities that people have to achieve lives they value. It was developed as an alternative welfare economics in the 1980s. It is considered the moral significance of individuals' capability rather than their rights or freedom. So, this from the name is a capability. So once, for a person's capability to do a specific task or to achieve what to achieve the significant contribution to society or to himself. This considers the moral significance of individuals rather than their rights of freedom. So not necessarily that you are given the right to live just because you are living, but rather you have to earn it. You have to work for your life rather than just gaining it automatically and then living it. That's for the first part. Thank you. So hello once again. We now move on to the prehistoric and ancient societies. Hunting gathering societies. Hunting and gathering societies played a crucial role in shaping civilizations. They were the first human societies and provided the foundations for the development of early civilizations. Hunting and gathering societies were characterized by a deep understanding of the environment and a close relationship with nature. Now, before the rules of civilizations, people back then would form groups of people with the mind of hunting animals. Like in the Ice Age, we had those people who hunted elephants or like mammoths and certain animals that can give a large that can feed a large portion of people. These hunting gathering societies, they are cultures in which human beings obtain their food by hunting, fishing, scavenging, and gathering wild plants and other edibles. Although there are still groups of hunters gathering in our modern world, we will here focus on the prehistoric societies that relied on the bounty of nature before the transition to agriculture began 12,000 years ago. So, hunting gathering societies can depend on their geographical location. If it's mountainous, they can either go hunting, while if they are near the sea or lakes, they can go fishing. And if they are located in a floral environment, they can gather wild plants and other edibles. Now we go through the Neolithic Revolution, or the time where agriculture first prospered. The development of agriculture and its impact on early civilization is known as the Neolithic Revolution. It began about 12,000 years ago and allowed people to settle in permanent villages and cities. Agriculture also led to more complex social organization, trade, and innovation. It changed how human lives eat, interact, and laid the foundation for modern civilization. So one big problem about hunting gathering societies was they had to keep moving or move to certain places to hunt their prey. Now, if their main prey or the prey are scarce in that area, they may have to move in search for other locations where the prey or the floral plants are available and are not scarce. So they had to move. Now, in this time, in the Neolithic Revolution, people learned how to plant, thus the rise of agriculture. People now began settling on areas where where lands are prosperous in planting, rich in soil and the perfect environment for planting. So this had led to the foundation for modern civilizations like Greece, those early civilizations like Mesopotamia and so on. Now, early civilization, most of which arose along large rivers. Since rivers are ideal for planting, you basically need water for agriculture to water your plants or crops, so it was a good location for agriculture. They were marked by an agriculturally sustained population that remained settled in one area and could number in the tens of thousands. The stability of that population allowed for the development of the discernible culture, which consists of all different ways a distinct group of people interact with one another in their environment and pass these ways down from generation to generation over time. This is not to say that earlier groups of people lacked social identities, but there were important differences between them and the early civilizations that followed. What we mean by discernible culture is that people back then, they were settling mostly to rivers for the water supply. Since agriculture started most of the discernible culture, people began developing stories of deities and myths. So they would, if their main source of prosperity in their land is water and they are next to a lake, they would often regard that lake as some blessing from a god or some deity. So they would offer sacrifices and offerings to it. So this became their identity, as they've become a cultural practice in their area. The development of early civilization occurred between 10,000 to 8,000 BCE in just few specific areas of the world that historians have labeled the cradles of civilizations. In this location today, Mexico, Peru, China, India, Pakistan, Iraq, and Egypt. The introduction of farming allowed larger populations to settle in one place, and the ability to produce and distribute surplus of foods enabled some people to specialize in such tasks and manufacturing, handicrafts, tending to the spiritual world, and governing. The people in this culture experienced radical changes in their lifestyle as well as in the ways their communities interacted with each other and their environments. Now, as people settle in one area, they needed order, and to have order, you must have a body that governs the people and keep them in check. Now, moving on to political system in ancient Mesopotamia, Egypt, Greece, and Rome. The political system of ancient Mesopotamia in Egypt, Greece, and Rome were all unique in their own ways. In ancient Mesopotamia, the government was based on the understanding that human beings were created to help and serve the gods. The high priest, king, assembly of elders, governors, and 80 other officials were recognized as stewards chosen by the gods to care for the people in the same way a father was expected to care for his family. As I mentioned earlier, people often make traditions where usually they will worship that certain area, for example the lake, and offer blessings. That started the tradition of serving gods, and it expanded to other aspects of their culture as well. Now, in Mesopotamia, they basically had kings and those elders that governed the people. In ancient Egypt, the pharaoh was the supreme ruler and was considered a god on earth. The pharaoh was responsible for maintaining Ma'at, the divine order of the universe, and was assisted by a bureaucracy of officials. Similar to Mesopotamia, they go by our monarchy type of government, and maybe they consider them the pharaoh a god. We now go to ancient Greece. Ancient Greece was a collection of independent city-states, each with its own form of government. Athens was a democracy, while Sparta was an oligarchy. The Greeks believed that the best form of government was one that was ruled by the people. The Greece in this time was different from the Mesopotamia and Egypt. They believed that the best form of government was the rule by the people. Thus, Athens developing democracy. In Rome, it was initially a monarchy but later became a republic. This has been through various revolutions to become a republic. The Roman Republic was characterized by a complex system of checks and balances, with two consuls serving as the executive branch and the Senate serving the legislative branch. Let us recall, ancient societies began from hunting-gathering societies, then transitioned to the Neolithic era, where agriculture became prominent and people settled in areas and later formed societies and formed political institutions to govern the people. This led to various ancient civilizations like the popular civilizations like Mesopotamia, Egypt, Greece, and Rome. This is where political ideologies are developed, and some are still followed to this day, like democracy and republic government. And yes, that would be all for my topic. My groupmates will handle the rest of the topics in Toroy.
Hello everyone! Today, we're diving into fascinating world of feudalism and the Middle Ages. Imagine a time between the 9th and 15th centuries when life was quite different from what we know today. Let's start by understanding what feudalism really means. Feudalism was a set of legal and military customs in medieval Europe that flourished between the 9th and 15th centuries. It can be broadly defined as a system for structuring society around relationships derived from holding of land known as fiefdom or fief in exchange for service or labor. So, feudalism is like a social agreement between people. If you wanted a piece of land called a fief, you could get it by promising to do something in return, usually work or service. So, in simpler terms, it's like swapping land for help. So next is the feudalism as a socio-political system. So feudalism was the leading way of political and economic life in medieval era. Monarchs like kings and queens maintained control and power by support of other powerful people called lords. So lords were always men who owned extravagant homes called manors and estates in the country. So feudalism was how things worked politically and economically in the Middle Ages. Kings and queens stayed in charge with the help of powerful people called lords. So these lords had fancy homes and land called manors. The people point was to create a society where land was exchanged for services or work. So next is the role of church and monarchy. So during the medieval era, the church played an essential role in society. The church influenced politics and kings and lords followed the church advice. Most people in medieval Europe were Christians under the Roman Catholic Church were people who lived in villages and local churches headed by their local priests. Medieval churches were divided into three types: the monastery, cathedral, and parish church. The monastery belongs to the monks community. Christians who live in larger cities went to cathedrals, and while the local community Christians attended to parish churches. Monarchs or kings and queens in feudal times believed in divine right of kings. The idea that God had given them the right to rule. In reality, few monarchs had enough wealth to keep their own armies and hard to rely on their vassals, so especially nobles, to provide enough knights and soldiers. Medieval monarchs were essentially feudal lords, but people gave them the most respect and they did not have. However, in some places, great lords grew very powerful and governed their fiefs-like states. In this case, monarchs were little more than symbolic rulers who had less real power. It influenced politics, and kings and lords listened to what it said. So most people were Christians under the Roman Catholic Church. Kings thought they had the right to rule because God said so. But in reality, they often needed help from their lords to have enough soldiers and knights. So, lastly is the social classes and the feudal hierarchy. So the social classes of Middle Ages consisted of the upper, middle, and lower classes. So within the upper classes were kings or monarchs, nobles, knights, and clergy. In the middle were merchants, doctors, and lower clergy. The lower class consisted of peasants or serfs. So medieval society had three main groups, which is the upper, middle, and lower classes. So everyone in the classes had a role, and it is based on who owned the land and who worked for them. So in the picture, the king owned all the land in the country and made the laws. He gave an area of land called a fief to rich lords and nobles. In return, the lord and the nobles agreed to supply the king with soldiers and heroes and horses for his army. The nobles gave some land to professional soldiers. In return, these knights fought for nobles and the king. So peasants worked the land for the nobles and knights, who in turn offered them protection. And now, we will proceed to the Renaissance and the Enlightenment. So imagine a time when people started thinking freely and questioning old ideas. So let's explore how these periods shape the way we view the world today. So the Renaissance and Enlightenment. The Renaissance saw people move away from religion in favor of free thought and religious freedom. The Enlightenment era was closer to the modern age and took the free thought of the Renaissance a step further. Scientific thought and relational thinking took center stage during this period. The Renaissance have said to begun in the late 1300s and lasted until the beginning of 17th century. On the other hand, the Age of Enlightenment lasted between the 17th and 18th century. So next is the impact of Renaissance on socio-political development. So in the political thought of the Renaissance, the religious explanation of politics and law was replaced by secular concepts in which the independence of the state from the church was promoted. In addition, a single and centralized state power mechanism was developed, which was a crucial shift. So, in the Renaissance, politics took a turn. Instead of relying on the religious explanations, people started considering secular concepts. So, this shift promoted the idea of separating the state of the church and introduced a powerful centralized state mechanism. So next is the Enlightenment, key ideas, philosophies of Enlightenment. So the Enlightenment was philosophical movement that dominated in Europe during 18th century. It was centered around the idea that reason is the primary source of authority and legitimacy, and it advocated such ideals as liberty, progress, tolerance, fraternity, constitutional government, and separation of church and state. However, historians of race, gender, and class note that Enlightenment ideas were not originally envisioned as universal in today's sense of the word. So the philosophic movement advocated for a society based upon reason rather than faith and Catholic doctrine, for a new civil order based on natural law, and for science based on experiments and observations. So fast forward to the 18th century, the era of Enlightenment. So imagine a time when our reason became the boss. This movement believed in liberty, progress, tolerance, and the separation of church and taste. It aimed for a society based on reason, natural law, and science backed by experiments and observations. So next is the rise of democratic ideals and the social contact theory. So social contact theory is a cynical but possibly realistic view of humanity without rules and people to enforce the rules. An example of a society in a state of nature can at times be observed when a society is plunged into chaos due to a catastrophic event. The theory of an implicit social contract holds that by remaining in that territory controlled by some society, which usually has a government, people give consent to join the society and be governed by the government, if any. The consent is what gives legitimacy to such a government. So now think about a social contract theory as a way of understanding society without rules. So it suggests that by living in a certain place, people kind of agree to be governed by its rule. It's like saying, I'll follow your rules because I'm living in your territory. So this idea gives legitimacy to a government. So the Renaissance and Enlightenment were like turning points in history, where people dared to think differently, shaping the world we know today. That's all. Thank you.
I am Kate N.C. Saldua, a member of Group 2, which is assigned to tackle about world politics development. Under world politics and development, or its development, we have human social political development and economic development. Now, I am assigned to tackle and to share to you what is human social political development. So let's first have an introduction about that, because later on we will know about its subtopics and key concepts. Now, human social and political development refers to the process of societal progress, thus its name, or thus its term, and transformation in terms of political systems, its social structures, and human rights. This development encompasses various aspects, including the establishment of democratic systems, the rule of law, and the protection of human rights. Equality, of course, and the promotion of civic participation and engagement. It involves the development of social and economic policies that aim to improve the well-being of individuals and communities. So we have our subtopic here, which is number 5, industrial revolution and modernization. So the key concepts that are covered in here is that the Industrial Revolution, what is it about, and also its impact on society and politics. Also, social and political changes that are brought about by modernization, of course. And lastly, the emergence of capitalism and socialism. First, go on to Industrial Revolution. What is it? What do you mean by it? And what is the changes that are brought by Industrial Revolution? So the Industrial Revolution is a period, or was a period, of scientific and technological development in the 18th century that transformed largely rural and agrarian societies. So when we say agrarian, we're talking about the farmers and cultivating the land. That's it, agrarian from the word itself. So that is especially developed in Europe and North America. From agrarian, it changed into industrialized or urban ones. Goods that have been once painstakingly crafted by hand, or what another term for that is manual, now has been started to be produced in mass quantities by machines in factories, thanks to the introduction of the new machines and techniques in textiles, iron making, and other industries. Oh, the next slide, Industrial Revolution in Philippines, or in the Philippines. So we often ask that, are there any industrial revolution in the Philippines? Did it happen? So according to my research, the Industrial Revolution in the Philippines occurred during the late 19th century and the early 20th century. So particularly it occurred between the late 1800s and the 1900s. This period marked the transition from an agrarian economy to one that embraced industrialization and modernization. So the Industrial Revolution in the Philippines was influenced by various factors. So one of which is the introduction of modern technologies, the expansion of transportation and communication networks, the integration of the country into the global economy, and this period saw the establishment of industries such as tobacco, textiles, sugar refining and processes, and of course manufacturing. So Industrial Revolution. So the Industrial Revolution had a significant impact on society and politics. It brought about profound changes that transformed the economic, social, and political landscape of the time. So we have here some key points on the impact of the Industrial Revolution. So we have 2, social changes and political transformation. So the Industrial Revolution resulted in significant social changes. So the shift from agrarian society to an industrial one led to urbanization, of course, as people moved from rural areas, to mga bukid-bukid, to cities in search of employment in factories. And of course, in political transformation, agrarian or Industrial Revolution also made its impact. It also had a profound impact on politics. It changed the distribution of power and the makeup of political systems. So the majority of the population became working class and manual workers employed by others. So there's a boss and there's an employee. That's the setup. And leading to changes in political dynamics, because there is a working class movement that have gained momentum at that time. So that's it. The impacts of the Industrial Revolution. Some key impacts. Moving on, there are also social and political changes that are brought about by modernization in the Philippines. So first is social policy expansion. So when we say social policy expansion, modernization has led to the expansion of social policies in the Philippines. So this includes reforms in areas such as healthcare, education, and social welfare. Of course, and the second one is impact on Philippine society. So modernization has had a significant impact on Philippine society, leading to changes in social norms, values, and customs. It has influenced various aspects of our daily life, including communication, our lifestyle choices, and cultural expressions. Third one is urbanization. Modernization has led to urbanization in the Philippines, with more people moving from rural areas to cities in search of employment or for better opportunities. This has resulted in the growth of urban centers and the development of infrastructures and changes in the social fabric of communities. Last one is democratization. Modernization has played a vital role in the democratization process in the Philippines. As societies modernize, there is often an increased emphasis on individual rights, which is a good thing for us. And political participation and the rule of law has led to the establishment and strengthening of democratic institutions, giving people more voice and agency in the political progress. So, the emergence of capitalism and socialism. The last one in number 5. This last subtopic or the key concepts in number 5. So the emergence of capitalism and socialism. So the emergence of this can be traced back to the late Middle Ages. It was a long time ago, and the early modern period. It gained a significant momentum during the Industrial Revolution in the 18th and 19th centuries. The emergence of socialism as a political and economic ideology can be traced back to the 19th century. So we're talking about the time here. So socialism was a response to the social and economic inequalities generated by capitalism during the Industrial Revolution. So we can conclude here that capitalism and socialism are clashing, or they're against each other. So because socialism is a response to the social and economic inequalities that are brought upon by capitalism. So to further enhance our knowledge about capitalism, let's read its definition. So capitalism is an economic system based on private ownership of the means of production and their operation for profit, of course, for money. Central characteristics of capitalism include capital accumulation, competitive markets, price systems, private property, property rights recognition, voluntary exchange, and wage labor. Meanwhile, socialism emerged as a response to the expanding capitalist system. It was against the capitalist logic or system itself. It presented an alternative. It aimed at improving the lot of the working class, so it is more on the working class, or its focus on the working class, and creating to more egalitarian society. So socialist thinkers such as Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels developed theories critiquing capitalism and advocating for a more equitable society.
Good day, everyone. First of all, my name is Gian Matriz, and for today's video, I will be tackling about the 20th century socio-political movements. We will delve into the impact of the world wars and the rise of nationalism, civil rights movements, and the right for equality, and lastly, the Cold War and the spread of ideologies. So, in this first slide, as you can see, the title is 20th Century Socio-Political Movements. So, we will be talking about the impact of the world wars and the rise of nationalism. Second is the rise of movements and the fight for equality. And lastly is about the Cold War and the spread of ideologies. Introduction. The 20th century socio-political development movements encompass a wide range of transformative social and political initiatives, including civil rights movements, feminist movements, labor movements, anti-colonial struggles, and more. These movements aim to address issues of inequality, discrimination, and injustice, shaping the political landscape and societal norms of the time. So, we will discuss about the social-political development movements that took place in the 20th century, which these movements were diverse and involved a variety of transformative initiatives aimed at bringing about social and political change. Examples of such movements include civil rights movements, which it sought to address racial inequality and discrimination. And also we have feminist movements, which this advocated for gender equality. And we have also the labor movements. These focused on improving rights and conditions. And lastly is anti-colonial struggles, which it aims to end colonial oppression and gain independence. The overarching goal of these movements was to tackle issues related to inequality, discrimination and justice relevant in society during the 20th century by engaging in protest, activism, and advocacy, which these movements played a crucial role in shaping both political landscape and societal norms of their time. They contributed to the advancement of human rights, equality, and social justice, leaving a lasting impact on the way societies around the world functioned during that era. Next slide is, we have, it stated the impact of the world wars and the rise of nationalism. The 20th century witnessed two devastating world wars that significantly shaped the socio-political landscape. Concurrently, the rise of nationalism played a pivotal role in defining the course of global events, influencing nations and fostering both cooperation and conflict. So in this, there are two major historical phenomena that occurred in the 20th century, and it had a profound impact on the social-political landscapes. First and foremost, the century saw the occurrence of two devastating world wars. It namely World War I, which in the time of in the year of 1940 to 1980, and second is the World War II in the year of 1939 to 1945. These conflicts had far-reaching consequences, causing immense human suffering, reshaping political boundaries, and altering the global balance of power. Simultaneously, the rise of nationalism emerged as a significant force during this period. Nationalism refers to a strong sense of identity and loyalty to one's nation. It often accompanied by the desire for self-determination and sovereignty. So, nationalism played a pivotal role in shaping the course of global events, which it influenced the nations by fostering a sense of unity and pride, contributing the formation of new states and the assertion of national interests. So, next slide. World War I. By the way, about the second slides, about this slide also, the impact of world wars and the rise of nationalism. Nationalism also had a darker side, as it could lead to conflicts and competition between nations, sometimes resulting in geopolitical tensions and even a warfare. Which it implies that the interplay of nationalism with the aftermath of the world wars influenced the social-political dynamics of the 20th century. It affected the relationships between countries, fostering both cooperation and conflict depending on how nations navigated their nationalistic sentiments in the post-war era. Alright, let's go to the next slides. So, we have here World War I. So, first, economic consequences. The war led economic instability, which massive debt and reparations contributing to the Great Depression, shatters economies, fueled social unrest, laying the groundwork for political movements. So this refers to the economic fallout of the war. The economic conflicts resulted in economic instability for many nations involved. Massive war-related debts and reparations imposed a heavy burden on the economies of several countries. This economic strain, combined with other factors, contributed to the onset of the Great Depression, a severe worldwide economic downturn that began in the late 1920s. The economic turmoil in turn led to social unrest as people face unemployment, poverty, and hardships. This environment of discontent laid the groundwork for the emergence of various political movements seeking solutions to these economic challenges. And the second is political shifts. The collapse of empires, or the Austro-Hungarian Ottoman Russian, which it led to the emergence of new nations. So in these political shifts, this focuses on political changes resulting from the collapse of empires following the World War I. The Austro-Hungarian, Ottoman, and Russian empires disintegrated as a consequence of the war. This disintegration led to the emergence of new nations and marked a significant shift in the political landscape. The dissolution of these empires created opportunities for the establishment of independent states and the redrawing of national boundaries. The formation of new nations often involving political restructuring and the establishment of different forms of government. This geopolitical transformation had far-reaching effects, shaping the political map of Europe and the Middle East and influencing international relations. So, in conclusion, the economic consequences of the war, including the massive debts and reparations, contributed to the Great Depression and social unrest. Simultaneously, the collapse of empires led to the emergence of new nations, marking a significant political shifts and restructuring in the post-war period. So in next slide, we have the interwar period. So first we have nationalism ascendant, and second we have the League of Nations. Nationalism ascendant, nationalist sentiments surged as the countries sought identity and autonomy. The rise of fascist ideologies in Italy, Germany, and Spain as a response to perceived national grievances. So this addresses the economic fallout of the So this surge of nationalist sentiments in the aftermath of World War I. Many countries having experienced the war and its consequences sought to assert their national identity and autonomy. So this desire for independence and a distinct national character led to the rise of nationalism movements. Specifically mentioned are the emergence of fascist ideologies in Italy, Germany, and Spain. Fascism in this context is presented as a response to perceived national grievances. And grievances, real or imagined issues that these nations believe needed address. Fascist leaders in these countries capitalized on nationalist sentiments to gain support and reshape domestic and foreign policies. So second, in interwar period, we have League of Nations. Despite of efforts to maintain peace, the League of Nations' ineffectiveness highlighted global challenges and collective security. So, League of Nations. This refers to the League of Nations this refers to an international organization established after World War I with the aim of promoting peace and preventing future conflicts. Despite its noble intentions, the League of Nations faced challenges in maintaining global peace and security. They suggest that the League's ineffectiveness highlighted the difficulties in achieving collective security on a global scale. The League of Nations struggled to prevent the outbreak of conflict, and its limitations became evident, particularly in the face of rising nationalist movements and aggressive expansionist policies. In this, the ascendance of nationalism with a post-war quest for identity and autonomy, highlighting the rise of fascist ideologies in certain countries. It also points out the League of Nations' inability to effectively address global challenges and maintain security, underscoring the complex geopolitical landscapes and tensions that contributed to the outbreak of the World War II. Next is we have World War II. We have two, the first one is totalitarian expansion, and the second one is United Nations. Totalitarian expansion. Axis powers sought territorial expansion fueled by nationalist fervor. Holocaust atrocities had highlighted the extreme consequences of nationalism. So it notes that these powers sought territorial expansion driven by strong nationalist fervor. The term totalitarian is used to describe this regime, signifying their centralized control over all aspects of public and private life. The aggressive territorial expansion was a result on the nationalistic ideologies that aimed to assert dominance and fulfill perceived national ambitions. So it mentions the Holocaust atrocities, particularly associated with Nazi Germany, underscores the extreme and devastating consequences of unchecked nationalism. The Holocaust refers to the systematic genocide and persecution of millions, primarily Jews, by the Nazi regime. And next we have the United Nations. So, United Nations. Post-war, the United Nations was established to promote international cooperation and prevent future conflicts. So in this, the UN was founded with a primary goal of promoting international cooperation and preventing future conflicts. It was created to be a forum for member countries to engage in diplomatic dialogue, promote peace, and address global issues collaboratively. This formation of the UN was response to the failures of the League of Nations and the desire to build a more effective international organization capable of maintaining global stability. Next slide is we have post-war. Excuse me. At this World War II, totalitarian expansion and totalitarian expansion of the Axis powers during the World War II, fueled by unchecked nationalism and resulting in severe atrocities like the Holocaust. Then transitions to the post-war era, highlighting the establishment of the UN or United Nations as a response to the need for international cooperation and the prevention of future conflicts. So next slide, we have post-war era. First, post-war era, we have Cold War and decolonization. Cold War, ideological tensions between superpowers by nationalism persisted. Proxy wars and the clear arms race characterized the bipolar era. So, Cold War, this refers to the ideological tensions of the two superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union. So these tensions were rooted in different political economic ideologies. Capitalism in the USA and communism in the USSR, leading to a long-standing rivalry rivalry, which long-standing rivalry. The Cold War, it is used to describe the state of political hostility, and military tension that existed between the superpowers and their respective allies. Despite of not engaging in the regulatory conflict, the Cold War was marked by intense ideological competition, political maneuvering, and the military build-ups. Nationalism played a role in fueling these tensions. Nationalism played a role in fueling these tensions as both superpowers sought to promote their own ideologies and influence around the world. Proxy wars or conflicts were fought indirectly between the superpowers of their allies, and the nuclear arms race characterized this bipolar era, heightening global tensions. Next is we have decolonization. Nationalist movements in colonized regions gained momentum, leading to the dissolution of the empires. So decolonization, it refers to the dismantling of colonial empires as nationalist movements in colonized regions gained momentum. The people in these regions sought self-determination and independence, challenging the colonial powers. The dissolution of empires occurred as a result of the growing strength of nationalist movements and the recognition of the right of colonized peoples to govern themselves. And this process had a profound impact on the global political map, leading to the emergence of numerous independent nations. So, in conclusion, ideological tension of the Cold War fueled by nationalism in the broader global context of decolonization. While superpowers engaged in a geopolitical struggle, nationalist movements in colonized regions gained momentum, leading to the end of colonial empires and the emergence of new independent nations. Next slide, we have the impact in socio-political movements. First, human rights. The atrocities of the World Wars prompted a global commitment to human rights, as seen in the Universal Declaration of Rights. So, human rights, this highlights that the atrocities committed during the World Wars prompted a global commitment to human rights, which the widespread devastation and human suffering during this conflict led the international community to recognize the need for a set of universal principles to safeguard the rights and the dignity of the individuals. So, the reference to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights underscores this commitment, adopted by the UN or United Nations in 1948. This Universal Declaration outlines fundamental human rights and freedoms to which all people are entitled. It serves as a foundational document for international human rights law and reflects a shared commitment to prevent the recurrence of the grave violations witnessed during the World Wars. And next is we have the European integration. Efforts like the European Union emerged to the fostering economic cooperation and preventing conflicts among European nations. So European integration. This refers to efforts like the European Union or EU that emerged after World War II. The European Union was established to foster economic cooperation and prevent future conflicts among European nations. The devastating impact of two world wars on the European continent motivated leaders to seek a path of collaboration rather than confrontation. The European Union began as a project aimed at integrating the economies of European countries to promote stability and prosperity. Over time, it evolved into a more comprehensive political and economic union, with the overarching goal preventing the historical animosities that had led to conflict in the past. So, in conclusion, a global commitment to human rights symbolizes by the Universal Declaration. The regional efforts like the European Union to foster the economic cooperation and prevent conflicts in Europe. Both initiatives reflect a shared recognition of the need for international collaboration and mechanisms to safeguard peace and unity. Alright, in next slide we have the second part of the 20th century socio-political movements, which is the civil rights movements and the fight for equality. So the 20th century witnessed a transformative socio-political movement that aimed to secure civil rights and equality for marginalized groups. These movements predominantly rooted in the United States, but with global reverberations sought to dismantle systematic discrimination and foster a society where all individuals enjoy their equal rights and opportunities. So in this slide, it highlights the transformative socio-political movement that aimed to secure civil rights and equality for marginalized groups. Which the term civil rights refers to the right of individual to political, social, and economic equality, which often emphasizing the rights of minority groups who historically face discrimination. This movement women fight for their freedom to vote. So this movement sought to address and rectify systematic discrimination against marginalized communities, particularly African Americans, but also encompassing other minority groups such as women, Native Americans, and LGBTQ individuals. So next slide we have the early 90s marked a period of deep-seated racial segregation and inequality, particularly in the United States, where African Americans faced pervasive discrimination and were denied basic civil rights. Legal doctrines such as separate but equal perpetuated racial segregation, serving as a catalyst for discontent and resistance. So the movement gained momentum in the 1950s and 1960s, marked by the events such as the Brown v. Board of Education Supreme Court decisions, which that in 1954, which it declares state laws establishing separate public schools for black and white students to be unconstitutional. The Montgomery bus boycott in 1955 and 1956, the March on Washington in 1963 also stand out as significant milestones. The Civil Rights Act of 1964, a landmark piece of legislation, outlawed discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. The Voting Rights Act of 1965 aimed to eliminate barriers preventing African Americans from exercising their right to vote. The epicenter of the movement was in the United States, which resonated globally. The struggle for civil rights inspired movement against apartheid in South Africa, anti-colonial movements, and efforts to address discrimination and inequality in various parts of the world. The civil rights movement left an inedible mark on society, challenging ingrained prejudices and initiating a paradigm shift towards greater inclusivity. However, challenges persist and the movement's legacy continues to influence contemporary discussions on social justice, equality, and the ongoing fight against discrimination. So, these movements described as the predominantly rooted in the United States, suggesting that the epicenter of these efforts was within the U.S. However, it also notes that the movement had global reverberations, which this indicates that the ideas, activism, and the struggles for civil rights in the U.S. had a broader influence, inspiring similar movements and discussions about equality and justice in other parts of the world. So, the movement aimed to dismantle systematic discrimination. Systematic discrimination refers to institutionalized practices and policies that perpetuate unequal treatment based on factors such as race, gender, or other characteristics. The ultimate goal was to foster a society where all individuals, regardless of their background, enjoyed equal rights and opportunities. This included addressing issues such as segregation, voting rights, employment discrimination, and other forms of inequality. So, the essence of a transformative socio-political movement in the 20th century that had its roots in the United States but had a global impact, the movement sought to combat systematic discrimination and work towards a more inclusive society where everyone had equal rights and opportunities, just like us, which we fight for our right to vote, for our right as a women, because not only men can do it, but also us. And also to the LGBTQ+, which even if we have a different gender identities, but even if we have a different gender identities, we have the right, or we should discriminate each others, which every one of us should have the freedom. Alright, lastly we have the Cold War and the spread of ideologies. The Cold War started roughly from the end of the World War II in 1945 to the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991 was a geopolitical and ideological struggle between the United States and the Soviet Union. This ideological conflict shaped international relations, influenced the policies of nations worldwide, and had profound implications for the spread of competing political and economic ideologies. The Cold War emerged from the ideological differences between the capitalist democratic ideology championed by the United States and its allies, and the communist socialist ideology advocated by the Soviet Union. These opposing systems reflected not only economic disparities but also conflicting visions of governance, individual freedoms, and the role of the states. The superpowers engaged in a global competition for influence, leading to the division of the world into spheres of influence. The ideological struggle extended beyond military posturing into diplomatic, economic, and cultural dimensions. Nations were compelled to align with either the Western or Eastern bloc, often resulting in the imposition of political systems and ideologies on other countries. The Cold War rivalry extended into space exploration, exemplified with the space race between the US and the Soviet Union. Technological advancements became a showcase for the superiority of each ideology, with achievements like the launch of Sputnik and Apollo moon landings, symbolizing not just scientific powers, but also ideological superiority. Next slide is, in the 1970s, a period of defense emerges. Both superpowers recognize the dangers of a direct military confrontation. Strategic arms talks aim to curb the nuclear arms race, while cultural exchanges between the US and the Soviet Union to a partial thaw in relations. However, ideological differences persisted. The Cold War concluded with the dissolution of the Soviet Union in 1991. The collapse of the communist bloc marked a triumph for the Western capitalist ideology. The end of the Cold War reshaped global geopolitics, leading to the emergence of new nations and the re-evaluation of political economic systems worldwide. So, the Cold War and the spread of ideologies. The Cold War is described as a geopolitical and ideological struggle, emphasizing both political and ideological dimensions of the conflict. Geopolitical refers to the global and strategic aspects of the rivalry, while ideological pertains to the clash of political and economic beliefs, which these struggles define international relations, during this period, shaping the policies of nations worldwide. The Cold War had a profound impact on international relations. The ideological conflict between the United States and the Soviet Union, which this influenced alliances, diplomatic strategies, and geopolitical decisions of nations across the world. The rivalry extended beyond military concerns to shape economic policies, development strategies, and political alignment. The Cold War emerged from ideological differences between the two major powers. The United States championed a democratic ideology advocating for free market economies and individual freedoms. In contrast, the Soviet Union promoted a communist socialist ideology that emphasizes collective ownership of the means of production and a centralized state-controlled government. These differences went beyond economic systems and extending to the conflicting visions of governments and the role of the state in society. So, the ideological conflict was not solely about economic disparities but also involved conflicting views on governance, individual freedoms, and the role of the state in society, which it suggests the Cold War was not only a struggle for economic dominance but also a clash of political and social ideologies. So in conclusions, this highlighted that the nature of the conflict impacts on international relations and ideological roots that shape the geopolitical rivalry between the United States and the Soviet Union. So that's all for today. And once again, my name is Gian Matriz, and thank you. Have a good night, everyone.
Good day to each and everyone. I am Rhea Encio, and I'll be tackling about the contemporary socio-political issues, the globalization and its effect on socio-political development, the environmental concerns and sustainability, as well as the role of technology in shaping society and politics. So let's go and let's start the lesson. Contemporary socio-political issues. These refer to the current and relevant challenges, debates, and conflicts that arise within society at the intersection of social and political dynamics. These issues reflect the concerns, struggles, and aspirations of individuals, communities, and nations in the present time. The term contemporary denotes that these issues are currently taking place, reflecting the ever-changing nature of society, while socio-political issues cover a wide range of topics with social, economic, cultural, and political dimensions. They may concern a single country or region, but they may also be global in nature. They are frequently the result of societal changes, economic shifts, political conflicts, technological advancement, and even shifting social values. These issues shape public debate, shape policy, and even fuel social movements and activism. Understanding and addressing current socio-political issues is critical to building a more equitable, inclusive, and sustainable society. To effect positive change and address the challenges that individuals and communities face, open dialogue, critical thinking, empathy, and collective action are being required. Next is globalization and its effect on socio-political development. But first, let us define what is globalization. So globalization refers to the increasing interconnectedness and interdependence of countries through the exchange of goods, services, information, ideas, and people. It has had a significant impact on global socio-political development. Globalization has the following effects on socio-political development. First is economic integration. Globalization has made economic integration easier, which has led to a rise in trade, foreign direct investment, and the expansion of multinational firms. So this has increased living standards and opened up job opportunities, which has helped the economies of many nations. However, certain areas and people have benefited more than others, leading to economic disparities. Next is cultural exchange and diversity. Cross-border diffusion of cultural ideas, customs, and values has been made possible by globalization. So it has made diversity, cross-cultural interchange, and even the blending of diverse customs easier. But worries about cultural uniformity and even the loss of regional customs and identities have been raised by it as well. Next which is the third one, the political interdependence. So as a result of globalization, there is now more political interdependence between countries. So global governance and the resolution of transnational issues are greatly influenced by international organizations like the United Nations, the World Trade Organization, the International Monetary Fund as well. So nations must work together to address global issues like migration, terrorism, and even climate change. The fourth one is the social movements and activism. So this is the emergence of international networks and platforms for activism and social movements has been made easier by globalization. So global mobilization and advocacy for a range of causes. This includes social justice, environmental sustainability, human rights, and human rights are very possible for activists. These movements have been amplified in large part by social media and digital communication. So next, which is the fifth one, is nationalism and political backlash. In certain nations, nationalism has grown in strength as a result of globalization. So this means that certain individuals and even communities perceive globalization as a threat to their national sovereignty, cultural identity, and economic well-being, or as having left them behind. Populist movements and challenges to the current global order have been fueled by this as well. The sixth one is the human rights and labor standards. Human rights and labor standards have gained prominence as a result of globalization. So this means that international agreements and standards have been put in place to defend the rights of workers, stop child labor, and advance ethical business practices. However, in some areas, it is still difficult to enforce and comply with this kind of standards. So it is very crucial for us to recognize the complex and varied ways in which globalization affects socio-political development. And they can still differ between nations and communities. And there may be both favorable and unfavorable results as well. Addressing these problems and injustices brought about by globalization is essential and is maximizing its potential to bring about constructive socio-political change. Next is environmental concerns and sustainability. So, sustainability and environmental concerns are important topics that have received a lot of attention lately. They center on maintaining the health of the environment, protecting it, and ensuring the planet's long-term viability. So, the following are just some important elements of sustainability and environmental concern. First is climate change. So, mostly brought on by human activity like burning fossil fuels, deforestation, and industrial processes. So, climate change is one of the most urgent environmental concerns. So, this has causes extreme weather events, an increase in sea level, rising global temperatures, and ecological disruptions. So, it is very important for the welfare of both humans and the environment to mitigate the effect of climate change and adapt to it. The second one is biodiversity loss. So, this is one major environmental concern, which is the loss of biodiversity, and this includes the extinction of species and the collapse of ecosystems. So the loss of biodiversity is caused by a number of factors. This includes pollution, invasive species, habitat destruction, and climate change. So the survival of various species, the provision of ecosystem services, and the maintenance of ecosystem stability all depend on the preservation of biodiversity. The third one is pollution and waste management. So the environment and public health are seriously threatened by pollution, which includes contamination of the air, water, and even the soil. So reducing the use of hazardous materials, encouraging sustainable production and consumption patterns, and even implementing efficient waste management techniques are all necessary ways for us to combat pollution. The fourth one is sustainable resource use. This is the long-term environmental sustainability, which depends on ensuring the sustainable use of natural resources. So this covers the ethical handling of minerals, fisheries, forests, and even water resources. So for us to meet the needs of present and future generations, sustainable practices attempt to strike a balance between resource extraction and conservation, and regeneration. So the fifth element is conservation and protected areas. National parks, wildlife sanctuaries, and protected areas must be established and maintained in order to preserve ecosystems and conserve biodiversity. So these regions or places support ecological balance, act as havens for threatened or endangered species, and even offer chances for ecotourism, education, and research. The sixth element is the renewable energy transition. So one of the most important aspects of environmental sustainability is the switch from fossil fuels to renewable energy sources. So reducing greenhouse gas emissions and dependence on finite resources are just two benefits of renewable energy sources like solar, wind, and even hydropower. So two of the most important tactics for reducing climate change are promoting clean energy technologies and increasing energy efficiency. So the seventh one is sustainable agriculture and food systems. So in order to ensure both environmental sustainability and food security, it is important to support sustainable agricultural practices. So for examples of sustainable agricultural practices are regenerative agriculture, organic farming, and agroforestry. So the goals of sustainable agriculture are to preserve soil health, reduce the need for chemical inputs, save water, and strengthen regional food systems. So for us to address environmental issues and advance sustainability, it is important for individuals, communities, corporations, and even governments to work together. So it entails implementing sustainable practices, endorsing laws, and programs that put environmental preservation first, and spreading knowledge about the significance of environmental stewardship. So the next one is the role of technology on shaping society and politics. But first, let us define what is technology. So we all know that technology is defined as the body of knowledge that deals with the innovation, invention, and application of technical means, as well as their interrelationship with life, society, and the environment. So, or in other words, technology means the use of scientific knowledge to achieve some specific goal or create applications that are used in industry or even in our everyday life. So technology is really important for us. So in the past few decades, technology has proliferated. Technology has also played a role in politics. It affects the lives of the people and even changes the way we learn, think, and communicate. It also plays a major role in society, and now it is very tough to imagine life without technology. So we have witnessed a rapid and widespread increase in the development and adoption of various technological advancements. So from the rise of smartphones and the internet to the advancement in artificial intelligence and automation, technology has become an integral part of our daily lives. It is because it has transformed the way we communicate, work, learn, and even entertain ourselves. So the proliferation of technology has brought about significant changes and advancements in various fields, shaping the way we live and even interact with the world around us. So politics and society are significantly shaped by technology in a number of ways. So the following will be the few things that illustrates the influence of technology. The first one is communication and information access. So these two areas have been completely transformed by technology, especially the internet and social media. So it has made it possible for us people, to communicate and exchange information across borders and in all time zones. So we were able to communicate with our loved ones all around the world. So this has also made it easier for ideas to travel, raise public participation, and given marginalized voices a platform. The second one is activism and political participation. So communities and individuals are now better equipped to support social change and take part in political processes, and we should thanks to technology. So we all know that social media platforms have been instrumental in coordinating protests, igniting social movements, and increasing public awareness of a range of socio-political issues. So digital campaigns, crowdsourcing, and online petitions have grown to be effective activism tools. The third one is democratization of information. So the internet has challenged established knowledge gatekeepers by democratizing access to information. So with the abundance of information available to us today, we people can educate ourselves, verify the facts, and even hold governments and institutions responsible. So as a result, there is now more openness and opportunity for better informed decision making. So the fourth one is the political campaigning and elections. So technology has completely changed the way that elections and political campaigns are conducted. So political candidates can target particular demographics and reach a wider audience through digital platforms. So campaign strategies now include data analytics and targeted advertising as essential components. But there are also growing worries about misinformation, privacy, and even the impact of algorithms on political discourse. So the fifth one is e-governance and civic services. So e-governance has been made easier by technology, allowing citizens to interact with government services online more easily. So technology has increased accessibility and efficiency by streamlining administrative procedures such as tax filing and even public record access. Additionally, citizens can interact with their representatives, offer feedback, and take part in the policy-making process. And we should thanks to digital platforms, because without digital platforms, this could not be possible. The sixth one is privacy and surveillance issues. So as technology has developed, worries regarding privacy and surveillance have grown. So debates concerning individual rights, data protection, and even striking a balance between security and the privacy have been triggered by government surveillance programs, data breaches, and the acquisition of personal information by tech companies. So the fifth one is the automation and artificial intelligence. So these two trends have the potential to drastically alter the labor force and financial systems. So although AI has the potential to increase efficiency and productivity, it also brings up issues with inequality, job displacement, and ethical considerations. So ensuring fair access to the advantages of AI and its ethical application are crucial factors to take into account. And it is also important to carefully consider how technology affects politics and society. So harnessing the potential of technology for positive social and political change requires balancing the risk and benefits, addressing ethical issues, and guaranteeing equitable access to the media. So in conclusion, the process of human socio-political development is a complex and continuous, involving multiple facets of advancements in social, economic, and political domains. Societies have changed, faced difficulties, and worked to improve over time. The following highlights the main ideas of human socio-political development. First is social progress. The evolution of societal norms, institutions, and values is a component of human socio-political development. So it involves advancing inclusivity, social justice, equality, and even human rights. Though obstacles and inequalities persist, societies have made strides over time in areas like LGBTQ+ rights, civil rights, and also gender equality. The second one is economic development. This is a key component of social political advancement, which is economic development. So this entails raising living standards, lowering poverty rates, and guaranteeing fair access to opportunities and resources to improve socio-political well-being. Economic growth, job creation, and sustainable development are also important. The third one is political systems. So the advancement of socio-political relations depends on the creation of political systems. So the distribution of power, representation, and citizen participation are shaped by democratic systems, authoritarian governments, and different forms of government. Building transparent and accountable institutions is essential to promoting socio-political development. The fourth one is the human rights and social justice. This is the advancement of society and politics depends on the acceptance and defense of human rights. So a key component of building inclusive and just societies is guaranteeing everyone, regardless of background, equal rights, justice, and freedom. So in order to promote social justice, these discrimination and systemic injustices must be addressed. Next is global interconnectedness. The socio-political development of humans has been significantly impacted by globalization and interconnectedness. Transnational ideas, technology, and information sharing have made it easier for activism, social movements, and the propagation of democratic values. However, globalization has brought up issues with inequality, cultural uniformity, and the loss of regional identity. Next is environmental sustainability. It is becoming more widely acknowledged that sustainability and environmental issues are essential to socio-political development. So for the benefit of present and future generations, environmental preservation, climate change mitigation, and the promotion of sustainable practices are very important. A major challenge is striking a balance between environmental stewardship and economic growth. Human socio-political development is a continuous process that involves both successes and failures. So it requires our cooperation, communication, and even the participation of private citizens, public servants, and global organizations. Through the resolution of social, economic, and political issues, communities can work toward increased fairness, equality, and well-being for all. So the next topic would be understanding human socio-political development. So understanding human socio-political development is of utmost importance for several reasons. First is, it allows us to comprehend the complexities of human societies and the factors that shape them. So with this, we can learn about the difficulties and advancement that societies have faced over time by researching the historical, social, and political environments in which they have been developed. This knowledge aids in our appreciation of the variety of human experiences, ideas, and even our goals. Next is, understanding human socio-political development enables us to recognize patterns and trends that can guide decision-making and policy formulation. So this means that we can determine tactics that advance social progress, economic development, and political stability by examining the achievements and shortcomings of earlier approaches. So it aids in our ability to draw lessons from the past and make wise decisions going forward. Next is the understanding human socio-political development fosters empathy and compassion. So it is really true. It is true that it fosters greater tolerance, respect, and understanding by enabling us to recognize the challenges and goals of various communities and people. So building inclusive, peaceful societies that celebrate diversity and advance social justice requires empathy and compassion. Next is, understanding human socio-political development helps us engage in meaningful dialogue and collaboration. So our shared challenges and the interconnectedness of global issues allow us to collaborate in tackling issues like poverty, inequality, and environmental problems or degradation. So it encourages teamwork and group efforts to achieve common objectives. The last one is, understanding human socio-political development empowers individuals to actively participate in shaping their societies. So understanding our past struggles and successes will enable us to advocate for positive change, hold institutions accountable, and participate in informed civic discourse. So it makes it possible for us to be responsible enough, engaged citizens who improve both the world and our communities. So overall, understanding human socio-political development is very important because it is vital for comprehending the complexities of societies, guiding decision-making, fostering empathy, promoting collaboration, and empowering individuals. So it also provides a foundation for building inclusive, just, and sustainable societies that prioritize the well-being and rights of all individuals.
A pleasant day or night to you, ma'am. I am Toroy, and I will be discussing about economic development and some of its theories. So, what is economic development? Economic development is the improvement of the economic well-being and quality of life in a community through production and trade. So, we can say that economic development, in simple words, is the improvement of wealth and resources of a nation or country through the process of consumption and production of goods and services. So why is economic development important? Well, economic development, if done effectively, works to retain and grow jobs and investment within a community. So the tax base that is created through this growth and development is used by our local governments to provide public services such as schools, police, fire department, and many more. And now that we are done with defining economic development as well as knowing its importance, let us move on to its key concepts and indicators. So the key concepts of economic development include number 1, which is growth. So growth is the quantitative increase in size. Number 2 is we have development. So development is the quality change aimed at a particular goal. Number 3 is we have community. So a community is a geographically defined place where people interact. Number 4, we have functions. Functions refers to the responsibilities and activities inherent in a community. Next is we have institutions, which are rules including informal norms and organization that coordinate human behavior. Next is we have linkages, which refers to the capacity of communities to carry out functions depending on strength of institutions. Next is we have community development. So community development is people in a defined location planning to change a situation. Next is we have the economic development. Economic development is of course the process that influences growth to enhance well-being. And lastly is the CED or SAD, or what we call community economic development, which is the process that allows residents to mobilize and build assets to improve their quality of life in a sustainable way. Now let us move on to the indicators of economic development. So first is we have the income per capita. The income per capita measures the economic growth. Next is we have the economic structure, which is the underlying framework. When we say underlying framework, it refers to the transportation, communication services, and more. Third is we have urbanization. So urbanization is the increasing proportion of the population living in urban areas compared to rural areas. Next is we have savings figures, which is a measurement of the amount of money. Next is we have the quality of life index, which is used to measure people's welfare and prosperity. And lastly, we have the Human Development Index, which is the importance of paying attention to the quality of human resources. And now that we are done with the key concepts and indicators of economic development, let us move on to some of its theories. So the first theory that we have is Rostow's stages of economic growth. So here in his theory, it states that there are 5 basic stages of varying length. So the first stage is the traditional society, wherein they don't use machines and technology yet. They do the work traditionally. It is an agricultural-based economy with intensive labor and low levels of trading, and a population that does not have a scientific perspective of the world and technology. The second stage, is the preconditions for takeoff, wherein here a society begins to develop manufacturing. Third stage is the takeoff. This stage is a short period of intensive growth in which industrialization begins to occur and workers and institutions become concentrated around a new industry. So the fourth stage is the drive to maturity. This stage takes place over a long period of time as standards of living rise, the use of technology increases, and the national economy grows and diversifies. So in the last stage, or age of high mass consumption, the country's economy flourishes in a capitalist system, characterized by mass production and consumerism. And that concludes Rostow's stages of economic growth, wherein there are 5 basic stages of varying length, which are the traditional society, preconditions for takeoff, drive to maturity, and age of high mass consumption. And now let us move on to the next theory, which is Romer's endogenous growth theory. So in Romer's theory, it maintains that economic growth is primarily the result of internal forces rather than external ones. So it argues that improvements in productivity can be tied directly to faster innovation and more investments in human capital from government and private sector institutions. So this theory notes that the enhancement of the nation's human capital will lead to economic growth by means of the development of new forms of technology and efficient and effective means of production. And that concludes my report on economic development and some of its theories. Thank you so much for listening, ma'am.
Good day, Ma'am Lado. My name is Janna Quillosa, a member of Group 2, and I will be tackling about economic factors affecting economic development as well as economic development strategies. Let's first delve into factors affecting economic development. The first one is natural resources. The primary factor impacting an economy's development is its natural resources. Natural resources include land acreage and soil quality, forest wealth, a healthy river system, mineral and oil resources, and a favorable climate, among others. Natural resources in abundance are necessary for economic growth. A country with insufficient natural resources may be unable to expand swiftly. However, the availability of abundant natural resources is a necessary but not sufficient prerequisite for economic expansion. Natural resources are underutilized, overutilized, or misutilized in less developed countries. This is one of the factors contributing to their backwardness. Our country, the Philippines, is rich in natural resources, especially on the agriculture side. Therefore, because of our fertile land, we are one of the producers of crops such as coconut, sugar canes, rice, pineapples, gums, resins, etc. And some of which are raised for exports. On the other hand, countries such as Japan, Singapore, and others lack abundant natural resources but rank among the world's industrialized nations. These countries have demonstrated a commitment to conserving available resources, making best efforts to manage them effectively and limiting resource waste. The next factor would be capital formation. Another critical aspect in an economy's development is capital formation. Capital formation is the process through which a community's savings are invested in capital goods such as plant, equipment, and machinery that boost a country's productive capacity and worker efficiency, hence ensuring a greater flow of products and services within the country. Capital creation suggests that a community does not spend all of its money on current consumer goods, but rather saves a portion of it and uses it to develop or acquire capital goods that significantly increase the nation's productive capacity. The next would be technological advancement. Technological advancement has a critical role in determining the rate of economic growth. Technological progress primarily entails the pursuit of new and improved techniques of production or the enhancement of existing processes. Occasionally, technological advancement results in an increase in the availability of natural resources. However, technological advancement generally results in an increase in production. In other words, technical advances enhances our ability to make more efficient and beneficial use of natural and other resources for the purpose of expanding production. Like in the Philippines, our government is investing on agricultural technology that could help our local farmers make their job easier and productive. It is possible to acquire a higher output from a given set of resources by utilizing improved technology, or a given result can be attained by utilizing a smaller set of resources. Other countries like the United States of America, the United Kingdom, France, and Japan, as well as other sophisticated industrial nations, have all developed industrial strength through the use of superior technology. The next factor to economic development would be human resource development. The population's quality is critical in determining the rate of economic growth. Thus, investing in human capital through educational, medical, and other social programs is highly beneficial. Human resource development improves people's knowledge, skills, and capabilities, hence increasing their productivity. This is why we have adapted the K-12 program so that our future workers would be globally competitive, having the right set of knowledge and skills. Because the Philippines is basically producing a large number of laborers, especially overseas Filipino workers that are known globally for their hardworking characters. The next factor would be population growth. Population growth generates labor and creates an expanding market for goods and services. Thus, increased labor results in increased output, which a larger market absorbs. This process results in continued increases in output, income, and employment, as well as improved economic growth. However, population growth should be expected to be typical. Only in sparsely populated countries like Greenland and Australia is population expansion beneficial. It is, however, unjustifiable in a country as densely populated as India. The next factor would be political factors. Political stability and effective governance are necessary and beneficial for modern economic progress. Stable, robust, and efficient government, ethical administration, clear policies, and their effective implementation foster investor confidence and attract both domestic and foreign capital, resulting in quicker economic growth. The last factor would be education. It is widely acknowledged that education is the primary mean of growth. Greater progress has been made in countries with widespread education, like South Korea, for example. Education is critical for human resource development because it increases labor efficiency and reduces mental barriers to new ideas and knowledge, hence promoting economic progress. So as I've said earlier, we now have the K-12 as part of our education program so that we would be globally competitive like other countries. Now let's proceed with economic development strategies. Let's start off with import substitution. Import substitution is an effort by countries to become self-sufficient and lower their dependence on developed nations. They do this by developing their own industries so they can compete with other countries that rely on exports. Import substitution became a dominant strategy in the wake of US stock market crash in 1929 up until around 1970s. The fall off in effective demand following the crash led to the decline in worldwide trade by 66% from 1929 and 1934. During these dire economic circumstances, countries implemented protectionist trade policies such as import tariffs and quotas to protect their domestic industries. In short, naanay tax ang mga imported products. Following World War II, a number of Latin American and East and Southeast Asian countries deliberately adopted import substitution strategies. The next strategy would be export-led growth. The last 40 or so years have been dominated by what has come to be known as export-led growth or export promotion strategies for industrialization, at least when it comes to matters of economic development. Export-led growth occurs when a country seeks economic development by engaging in international trade. Since the Philippines is highly abundant in abaca fibers and sugar canes, we are known for exporting products that are made from abaca as well as sugar to other countries. The next and the last one would be diversification. Diversification is the general strategy whereby companies attempt to profit by using multiple strategies rather than putting all of their eggs in one basket. Diversification helps to decrease risk by spreading risk out over a variety of strategies. If one strategy fails, then the failure hurts the business only to the extent that it is invested in that strategy. For instance, if a company has its resources invested in the creation of 10 different types of products and the market for one of those products dries up, then that only affects 10% of the business profitability, assuming that each product is equally profitable. So that would be all for my report. Thank you.
So good day everyone, I am Mae Valerie Bacuac. So today I'm going to discuss about the economic development and poverty reduction. So to better understand it, let's define it first. Economic development is a process whereby simple, low-income national economies are transferred into modern industrial economies. So although the term is sometimes used as a synonym for economic growth, generally it is a country's economy involving a qualitative as well as quantitative improvements. And the poverty reduction, it is term used means not simply increasing income levels but rather creating conditions in which all humans lead healthy and creative lives with sufficient basic needs like food, shelter, clothing, and they being guaranteed freedom, dignity, self-esteem, and free from unfair treatment by the government and the community to participate in the society. In every country, they have measurement in order to measure the poverty in their country. So in the Philippines, they use pre-tax income as a measure of household welfare. So a household is deemed poor if its pre-tax income falls below a minimal income sufficient to buy a household basic needs. So pre-tax income, it is also known as earnings before tax. So ang pasabot sa pre-tax income is ang imong sweldo wala pa siya kuwai sa buwis. So or pre-tax earnings, it is the net income earned by a business before taxes are subtracted. So ang gikwinta nila is imo sa sweldo wala pa siya kuwai og tax mo na ang ilang ginagamit sa Philippines in order to measure the household welfare sa usa ka pamilya. So pre-tax income, however, accounts for deductions related to operating expenses, depreciation, and interest expenses.
So, multidimensional poverty measure. It is an index that measures the percentage of households in a country defined along 3 dimensions: monetary poverty, education, and the basic infrastructure services, to capture a more complete picture of poverty. So it also means to capture the complexity of poverty that considers dimensions of well-being beyond just monetary poverty. Because of the poverty, the government implies strategies for poverty reduction. So the government has implemented various programs and reforms to reduce poverty by targeting education, healthcare, and overall economy. So here are the five ways the program is combating poverty in the Philippines. So the first one is greater access to education. So greater access to education. A factor of systematic poverty is a lack of access to education in impoverished area. So people gain basic skills and increase job opportunities through education, which can help to combat poverty in the Philippines. So therefore, the Philippines signed the Universal Access to Quality Tertiary Education Act in 2017 to encourage more people to enroll in a higher education and to address the issue of education inequality. So the government subsidizes the cost of tuition for state universities and colleges, or SUC, to students, as well as the expenses such as school supplies. So public institutions also have access to a tuition subsidy. So the act aims to decrease the number of dropouts in higher education and to promote the idea that higher education is available to everyone. So the second one is higher access to healthcare. So it is an effort to improve the healthcare system. So President Duterte signed the Universal Healthcare Act in February 2019. So the UHC Act provides access to the full spectrum of healthcare by enrolling citizens in the National Insurance Program and guaranteeing health coverage to all. While healthcare is not completely free, those in poverty will have more access to health services. To ensure the effectiveness of healthcare, the Act will form the Health Technology and Assessment Council, or the HTAC. So the council will consist of health experts who will assess health developments such as technology, vaccines, and other advancements. So additionally, the Philippines will more allocate funds to field health, which will improve the quality of service and lower the cost of the medicine. Third one is the family aid. So kabalo naman tanga, mas familiar kayo nato ng 4Ps, or the Pantawid Pamilya Pilipino program. So to further efforts to support citizens, the government implemented the 4Ps, or the Pantawid Pamilya Pilipino program in 2007. So the 4Ps is a conditional cash transfer program for impoverished households. So the program gives household grants so as long as they meet certain requirements, including keeping the children in school, so having regular checkups, and having parents or guardians attend family development sessions. So the 4Ps program benefits around 20 million Filipinos, 9 million of whom are children. Therefore, the program reaches about 20% of the population, with the goal of greater poverty reduction in the Philippines. Economic improvement. With the goal of reducing poverty by strengthening economics, President Duterte signed the Rice Tariffication Law in February 2019, amending the Agricultural Tariffication Law Act of 1996. So the law places as 35% tariff on imported rice, with the goal of prioritizing local rice production for the population by stabilizing the supply. So the tariff is also means to benefit local farmers by creating a more efficient and competitive agricultural system. And last but not the least, the Build. The Duterte administration created the Build infrastructure in 2017. The initial goal of the program was to complete 75 projects, but Duterte revised the plan, instead targeting finishing 100 projects. So some projects, inclusive growth and equitable distribution of resources. So inclusive growth means economic growth that creates employment opportunities and helps in reducing poverty. So it means having access to essential services in health and education by the poor. So it includes providing equality of opportunity through education and skill development. So let's move on to the sustainable economic development. Sustainable economic development is a national initiative built on local economies, unique assets to address their individual challenges and provide quantifiable real-world benefits. It is a practical, implementable toolkit that tailors strategies to work for local people, businesses, and institutions. So let's move on to environmental sustainability. Environmental sustainability is the ability to maintain an ecological balance in our planet's natural environment and conserve natural resources to support the well-being of current and future generations. So to better understand it, so let's define first the sustainability and what does it mean. So sustainability is about meeting the needs of 2% generations without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So there are three main pillars to sustainability that many organizations try to achieve. The first one is the social sustainability. So for businesses, social sustainability, it includes important workplace and employee issues like health and safety, inclusion, empowerment, and professional development opportunities, and work-life balance. So the second one is the economic sustainability. It is while it seems like pillar, it is focused on the organization's ability to remain profitable through its work throughout its lifetime. So economic sustainability, it is just about money. An economically sustainable organization is one that can drive revenue and maintain long-term business growth without negative impacting to the community, environment, and health and well-being of its employee. And the last but not the least, the environmental sustainability. From its word, it talks about on the protecting of environment. So the pillar is about protecting the environment for future generations. So environmentally sustainable organization takes steps to enhance efficiencies like reduce resource consumption and waste and measure and monitor carbon emissions across the entire supply chain. So many organizations are ampling to environment efforts by adopting sophisticated technology, including sophisticated energy technology that allows them to track and reduce the environmental impact. So let's move on to the resource management. So what is resource management? So resource management is a series of processes and techniques used to ensure you have all the necessary resources to complete a project or meet business objectives. So it also focuses on making the most efficient use of those resources by eliminating waste for more profits and high return on investment, or the ROI. Resource management puts you in control to avoid conflicts as much as possible. So let's move on to the green technology. So green technologies is often referred to as a clean tech or environmental technology. Its application of science and technology to create environmental friendly products and services. So the ultimate objective of green technology is not just to reduce ongoing harm on our environment, but also repair the existing damage and promote regeneration. So it encompasses everything done to restore our environment and leverage Earth's natural resources in a sustainable manner. So through green technologies, we have also renewable energy. So renewable energy is energy derived from natural resources or sources that are replenished a higher rate than they are consumed. So sunlight and wind, for example, are such sources that are constantly being replenished. So renewable energy sources are plentiful and all around us. Below are the renewable energies found in the Philippines, as well as the geographic location of the power plants where they can be found. So the first one is the hydroelectric power. So hydroelectric power, so the water is the main source of energy. So the power harnessed from moving bodies of water is called hydroelectric power. So the Philippines make use of the two methods in order to harness power. So the first one is the dam storage or the impoundment and the run of river. While impoundment makes use of man-made dams in order to store water, run of river relies on flowing bodies of water like waterfalls. So both methods turn a turbine in order to generate power. So hydroelectric power plants in the Philippines are located in the Pangasinan, Benguet, Laguna, Isabela, Bulacan, Nueva Ecija, Ilocos Sur, Bohol, Lanao del Sur, Danao del Norte, Bukidnon, Davao del Sur, and Misamis Oriental. Second one is geothermal power. So geothermal energy comes from the heat beneath the Earth's surface. So there are two methods also for extracting geothermal energy used in the Philippines: the flash steam and the binary cycle. So the geothermal energy extracted through flash steaming extract water with a temperature greater than 182 degrees Celsius using steam pipes. So the steam is used to power turbines that generate energy, while the remaining water is released back into the ground. So the binary process extract water at a lower temperature than steaming flash or flash steaming. So the extracted water then is used to boil a working liquid with a lower boiling point that will power the turbine. So the water is also released back into the ground. Geothermal plants in the Philippines are located in Laguna, Sorsogon, Albay, Batangas, Negros Occidental, Leyte, and North Cotabato. So the third one is the solar power. So the solar energy is used as a source of energy in the Philippines. So from the word itself, solar, through heat of the sun. So through industrial size photovoltaic plants in the country. So the Philippines has only recently incorporated large-scale solar farms in the country, despite the fact that the country is geographically located in a region that receives high amount of sunlight each year. So major solar farms in the Philippines can be found in the Cavite, Pampanga, Ilocos Norte, and Cagayan de Oro. The next one is the wind energy. So like water, moving air also generates energy through wind turbines that supply kinetic energy through mechanical power. So the turbines then power a generator to produce energy. Wind power plants in the Philippines are located in Ilocos Norte, Rizal, Guimaras, and Aklan. And the last is the biomass energy. So biomass energy is similar to fossil fuel that is combusted in order to boil water to produce steam that will drive a generator. So being an agricultural country, the Philippines is rich natural resources like bagaces, rice hulls, and coconut hulls that is used instead of fossil fuel. So biomass power plants in the Philippines are located in the Isabela, Nueva Ecija, Rizal, Laguna, Isabela, and Metro Manila. So through those renewable energy, this rise in awareness that has sparkled the Philippine community to recognize that many benefits of having clean energy powering our homes and business. And so the climate change, so this refers to a long-term shifts in temperature and weather patterns. Such shifts can be natural due to changes in the sun's activity or large volcanic eruptions. So because we are already committed to some level of climate change, responding to climate change, it involves two prolonged approach, the mitigation and the adaptation. So let's define first the mitigation. So mitigation, reducing climate change. So it involves reducing the flow of heat, trapping greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, either by reducing sources of these gases, for example, the burning of fossil fuels for electricity, heat, or transport, or enhancing the sinks that accumulate and store these gases, such as the oceans, forests, and soil. So the goal of mitigation is to avoid significant human interference with the Earth's climate, stabilize greenhouse gas levels in the time frame sufficient to allow ecosystems to adapt natural to climate change, ensure that food production is not threatened, and enable economic development to proceed in a sustainable manner. And the second one is the adaptation. So adaptation means adapting to life in a changing climate change. Changing climate, it involves adjusting to actual or expected future climate. So the goal is to reduce our risk from harmful effects of climate change like sea level rise, more intense extreme weather events, or food insecurity. So it also includes making the most of any potential beneficial opportunities associated with climate change. For example, longer growing seasons, longer growing seasons, and or increased yields in some regions. And that's all, and thank you.
Good day to each and everyone. My name is Rodelyn Cañete, and I'll be continuing the discussion, which are globalization and economic development and challenges and issues in economic development. Let's start off globalization and economic development. So first, let us define what is globalization. Globalization is the word used to describe the growing interdependence of the world's economies, cultures, and populations brought about by cross-border trade in goods and services, technology, and flows of investment, people, and information. Now, let's proceed to what economic development is. So economic development is the process by which emerging economies become advanced economies. In other words, the process by which countries with low living standards become nations with high living standards. Economic development also refers to the process by which the overall health, well-being, and academic level the general population improves. Let us now discuss the liberalization and international trade. Trade liberalization is the removal or reduction of restrictions or barriers on the free exchange of goods between nations. On the other hand, international trade is an exchange involving a good or service conducted between at least two different countries. So, in 1981, the Philippine government began to liberalize its trade policies, including those in many agriculture-related sectors. The trade liberalization program lowered tariff rates and removed many import licensing regulations intended to protect producers of import substitutes. And in conducting trade liberalization, there are advantages and disadvantages. So let's first go through advantages of trade liberalization. First is FDI and economic growth. Second, diverse product and services. Third, introduce technology, ideas, and culture. Fourth, globally scalable business model. Fifth, an incentive to improve education. And lastly, competition, innovation, and low prices. And now, let us know its disadvantages, starting off the increased competition for domestic entities, loosened regulations exploit workers, environmental damage, increased dependence on imports. It may affect indigenous people, and brain drain can affect the economy. Proceeding to international trade, the top two import sources of the Philippines were China and Japan, with 22.7% and 9.4% import share, respectively. The United States was the largest export market of the Philippines, with 15.9% of total exports value in 2021. It was followed by China, a very close second, which accounted for 15.5%. Also, in international trade, there are 7 key benefits. First is more job opportunities. Second, expanding target markets and increasing revenues. Third, improved risk management. Fourth, greater variety of goods available. Fifth, better relationship between countries. Next, enhance company reputation. And lastly, opportunities to specialize. So let's move on to foreign aid and development assistance. Foreign aid, the international transfer of capital, goods, or services from a country or international organization for the benefit of the recipient country or its population. While official development assistance, or ODA, is defined as government aid designed to promote the economic development and welfare of developing countries. So in the Philippines, there are some notable givers of foreign aid, which are Japan, United States, Australia, Korea, the World Bank, and the Asian Development Bank, or ADB. As of 2018, Japan was still the largest source of foreign aid in the Philippines. The ODA, as defined in Republic Act 8182, ODA Act of 1996, is a loan or a grant administered to promote sustainable social and economic development and welfare of the Philippines. Now, let's go to economic integration and regional cooperation. Economic integration or regional integration is an agreement among nations to reduce or eliminate trade barriers and agree on fiscal policies, while regional cooperation refers to the political and institutional mechanisms that countries in a general geographical region devise to find and strengthen common interests, as well as promoting their national interests through mutual cooperation and dialogue. The economy rebounded, expanding by 5.6% in 2021 after contracting by 9.6% in 2020. As the major drivers of growth, investment grew by 19%, with household consumption rising by 4.2%. On the supply side, services was the largest contributor to growth, expanding by 5.3%. Remittances from Filipinos working abroad rose by 5.1%, reaching $34.9 billion in 2021, or 8.9% of GDP. Inflation increased to 3.9% from 2.4% in 2020 on higher food and petroleum prices. GDP is forecast to grow by 6% in 2022 and by 6.3% in 2023 as domestic demand strengthens. As economic recovery accelerates, revenues will continue to improve with the government's decision to maintain excess taxes on petroleum products. Finally, with our last topic, the challenges and issues in economic development. There are 3, which are income inequality and social disparities, corruption and governance challenges, and political instability and conflict. So let's first tackle about the income inequality and social disparities.
Income inequality refers to how unevenly income is distributed throughout a population. The less equal the distribution, the greater the income inequality. Income inequality is often accompanied by wealth inequality, which is the uneven distribution of wealth, and social disparities or inequality is the existence of unequal opportunities and rewards for different social positions or statuses within a group or society. It contains structured and recurrent patterns of unequal distributions of goods, wealth, opportunities, rewards, and punishments. The World Bank said that the Philippines has made important gains in poverty reduction, driven by high growth rates and the expansion of jobs outside agriculture. Poverty fell by 2/3 from 49.2% in 1985 to 16.7% in 2018. By 2018, the middle class has expanded to nearly 12 million people and the economically secure population had risen to 44 million. Yet, inequality remains high. The top 1% of earners together captured 17% of national income, with only 14% being shared by the bottom 50%, with an income GINI coefficient of 42.3% in 2018. The Philippines had one of the highest rates of income inequality in East Asia. Next, the corruption and governance challenges. Corruption is a form of dishonesty or a criminal offense which is undertaken by a person or an organization which is entrusted in a position of authority in order to accrue illicit benefits or abuse power for one's personal gain. Also, corruption erodes the trust we have in public sector to act in our best interests. It weighs taxes and rates meant for important community projects. This results in poor quality services or infrastructure or projects never getting off the ground. According to GAN Integrity's Philippines Corruption Report updated May 2020, the Philippines suffers from many incidents of corruption and crime in many aspects of civic life and in various sectors. Such corruption risks are rampant throughout the state's judicial system, police service, public services, land administration, and natural resources. Transparency International's Corruption Perceptions Index scores a list of countries on a scale from 0 as highly corrupt to 100 as very clean, then ranks them by score. In contrast, the 2022 Corruption Perceptions Index, which scored 180 countries worldwide, gave the Philippines a score of 33. When ranked by score, the Philippines ranked 116th among the 180 countries in the index. In 2021 and 2022, Transparency International reported the Philippines as a significant decliner in score for the region. The country had dropped to a score of 33 in those years from its 2014 high of 38. And lastly, political instability and conflict. Political instability is a natural tendency of a government to collapse either because of conflicts or growing struggles, sometimes violent, between various political parties. Political instability also occurs if there is a rapid change of government and policy, increasing the likelihood of subsequent instability. Also, political instability is likely to shorten policymakers' horizons, leading to suboptimal short-term macroeconomic policies. It may also lead to a more frequent switch of policies, creating volatility and thus negatively affecting macroeconomic performance. Political conflicts occur all too frequently in resource-limited settings, unfortunately producing almost unavoidable turmoil, resulting in violence and negative health consequences. And conflicts often have a basis in economics and inequality, destabilizing communities by slowing economic development and increasing insecurity, and therefore have a profound effect in the developing world. That's all for today, and thank you everyone.
That's it for human social political development. Thank you so much for listening and for watching. Have a great day.